Hey guys, it's Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we had an adventure in space and time. What was that one about?
That was the docudrama, as it were, about the creation of Doctor Who back in 1963. Some very interesting parts of it. Again, the one that had the most impact on me was just that short segment of the Kennedy assassination, which I was there for. Not in Dallas, I was in England at the time. So anyway, but yeah, very well done. Really very interesting. Glad to be able to see that finally.
Yeah, and apparently the last shot where it had Matt Smith and he started flicking some of the levers on the TARDIS console, that is apparently also in reference to, in that episode where Hartnell regenerates, there is a shot where those levers are basically activating themselves. So maybe it. I mean, it wasn't, but maybe it was Matt Smith. Who
That's
knows?
pretty cool.
Yeah. So, let's see. Now today we are moving on to episode 4. Moving back, actually. Yeah. We are now into our chronological look at Doctor Who Classic. For the longest time, we've been just looking at sort of a tour of Classic Who, where we just look at, just certain episodes. But now, we're just going straight through. And we are picking up where we left off with the 4th serial. Last time, where we had our gang, it was the Edge of Destruction, where it was all on the TARDIS, and they were trying to figure out what's happening, and eventually they figured out it was the fast return switch was stuck, and they realized that the TARDIS is alive and trying to tell them to help them, basically.
Yes.
Really interesting episode. And let's see. This one is completely missing. Which I believe for a while we're actually pretty good on. Like, after this, they're pretty solid, actually.
Yeah.
So, but this one happens to be completely missing.
I'll have to see how much I remember of Marco Polo.
Yeah. And also, something we're doing a little bit different with this one is, this time around, there are 7 episodes. But we're not doing all 7 of them in one shot again.
We learned our lesson.
Yeah, we can't do that again. So what we're going to do is, in this video, we're going to watch the first 4 episodes of Marco Polo, and then next week we'll come back for the final 3. And then we'll just kind of do that when there's more than 4 parts. We'll split it into 2 videos, just because, well, it's better for all of us. So, yeah, I guess that's pretty much it. I guess the only other thing I could say is, because technically we are, even though this isn't technically the first episode of the season, it is the first episode of our, the first season of our chronological view, basically. So, if you want to watch our full-length reaction, our completely unedited reaction for free, you actually can for this episode, for these first 4 episodes. So, what you gotta do is head down in the description or to the pinned comment on this video. There'll be a link there. And when you click that, it'll take you over to my Patreon page, and you can watch our full unedited reaction of Marco Polo. Not that you would do that, but you can. So basically, what it is, it's just completely unedited footage, and we don't have show footage. Normally it would be right here. We don't have that in there because, well, that's illegal. We can't just give you the show footage, even if these are the recons. So what you have to do is sync up your copy of Marco Polo to our footage, basically. And you can try that out. Again, this is a weird episode to try that out on, but you can. And if you like that, then you can consider signing up for full length, which is only $5 a month. So,
we are occasionally funny.
Occasionally. I mean,
and as one commenter put it, I apparently have an anecdote for everything.
Well, it's true. You do. You do have an anecdote for everything. So, I'm sure you'll find something about Marco Polo. So,
I'm sure.
But yeah, that is pretty much that.
I've already thought of one.
Oh, of course you have. So, with that all being said, we might as well get right into this episode of Doctor Who Classic. Here we go. Okay.
Did you know that there's actually a stage play of Marco Polo called Marco Millions? There's like 70 some odd speaking parts. And it's about the journey all the way out to China, and then his stay in China, and then the journey back. And one of the big scenes is apparently there's a Chinese princess. I can't remember if he married the princess or just was in love with her. But you literally see the big sweaty slaves dragging a glass coffin with the girl's body in it across the stage. That's one of the big scenes.
Interesting. Okay, so your choice, color or not color?
Well, I watched it in black and white, so let's watch it in color.
All right, let's try color.
We didn't have color TV back in 1963.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody who did.
I mean, I'm sure technically this wasn't shot in color, it was restored in color.
Back to the original. That's still my favorite version of the theme.
Even this is in color, which is weird.
Where do you think we could be? In the Alps?
Could be the Andes. Himalayas. Roof of the world.
The roof of the world.
Too short for the Alps.
I wonder. If only. Well, the doctor isn't very reliable, you know. Mustn't count on it.
The Andes are a very narrow strip, whereas the Himalayas are very wide.
What's the matter?
All the lights in the ship have gone out. Even if I do find the fault, I don't suppose I should be able to repair it before it gets dark, and then we should all feast at that.
I don't suspect there are many passages in the Himalayas like that. Mongols.
The old man has the mountain sickness.
Yes, he has.
My caravan is further down the pass. Come.
Come on, doctor.
Even at 7,000 feet, it would be starting to have
Barbara?
thin air.
I was asking myself the same question.
I don't know if you remember this, but Marco Polo was only about 17 years old when he left for China. When he came back, he was 42 and nobody recognized him.
Yeah. He's European, Susan. Is your name Marco Polo?
It is, my lady, and may I ask who you are?
Oh, we're travellers, yes. That's my grandchild, Susan, and that's Miss Wright, and that's Charlton.
Chesterton. Ian Chesterton. My companions are the Lady Pink.
See, now I don't know if it's on purpose or
and
not.
Polo Tagant. We travel to Shangtu.
Shangtu. That's in China, isn't it?
China? I do not know this place. Shangtu is in Cathay.
Cathay, yeah.
The marriage has been arranged by my family. I know only 2 things about him.
What are they?
He's a very important man.
That's a good start.
And he's 75 years old.
Yeah, when I tell my history students about arranged marriages, they cannot believe that.
Let me kill them.
They are travelers.
They are evil spirits, sorcerers, magicians.
Gotta say, I like the costumes. It's very
Yeah.
pretty. Now, the set is not,
You may see that I
but
speak the
you
truth.
can't really film inside of a
I
yurt.
think
It's
the
kind of
sun's
small.
rays will dispel the shadows from your mind,
Is
Tagana.
it what you believe?
You know, from this angle, Marco Polo kind of looks like Matt Smith.
Yeah.
The doctor calls it the TARDIS.
Where are the wheels?
He doesn't have any.
Then how does it move?
Through the air.
Did I not say that they were evil spirits?
But it could be moved by hand.
Oh, yes, if you had sufficient men.
Well, we'll make a sledge and take it down the pass. Then we shall see.
She seems skeptical.
It is always funny when they just show them just carrying the box down.
The old Silk Road.
Success. My plan has worked.
I like this Indiana Jones way
Strangers and
of
their
traveling.
unusual caravan accompany me to and from Cathay.
Oh, I wish we could have seen that carriage with the TARDIS on top,
What the strangers'
like
reaction
actually
will be
moving.
when I tell them what I propose to do.
Man, this
Go ahead.
this is the episode that we can't actually watch. Like, they're going all over the place.
But great sets. I mean,
Yeah.
Considering that caveman set that we watched.
Yeah. It was the only one that was ready.
I shall offer him a gift so magnificent that he will not be able to refuse me.
Oh, he's selling us out.
You mean to give the doctor's caravan to him? Yes. Surely for a man who possesses a flying caravan, all things are possible.
No. We need special metals, materials, things that don't exist in Venice. I'm afraid you don't understand all the problems involved.
And neither do you, young man.
Well, it would also make sense to just get in the TARDIS and take him back that way.
Longer, but you'll get there eventually.
Doctor, he's serious.
I know he is, yes.
What you going to do?
Oh, I haven't the faintest idea.
Doctor's gone round the bend.
That will bring the mighty Kubla Khan to his knees.
Alright, that's the first episode. Where'd the mouse cursor go? There it is.
All right. I mean, I got to say, this is what I watched Doctor Who for.
Yeah.
I mean, the cavemen were okay. The Daleks. I want to see a time travel show where they actually interact with people that we have read about in history. I mean, so this is perfect for me.
Yeah.
Very well written so far. I mean, it doesn't seem to lag at all. None of the padding that we saw in the cavemen story, or even the Dalek story for that matter. So I'm liking it a lot.
Yeah. I will say it is helping a little bit that it's in color, because like I don't know, it gets me more into it, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's not a half bad recoloring job too.
No.
Like when they showed the intro, it was like, okay, they just put some colors over the intro, whatever. And because I've seen some old silent movies where they would just throw a tint over it, and it's like, all right, well, it's okay, but it doesn't do a whole lot. But this one actually pretty good.
I am very interested in seeing that film that Peter Jackson put out last year. They took actual footage from World War I, which was very, in modern day technology, is very jerky and everything. But they figured out a way to not only colorize the film from black and white, but also to run it in normal time, so that when you look at it, it looks like a movie that we would have made today, but it was filmed, 100 years ago. So I would love to see that. I also want to see 1917, just because, World War I, it's history.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we should head on into part 2.
All right.
And a lot was packed into that first episode.
Yeah.
And that's the strange thing, because it's 7 parts long. So I'll be curious, like, why is it 7 parts long?
Ultimately, I love the way they set that up, though. The Khan was getting older, and when he finally realized that he wasn't going to make it, he thought it was best to send Marco and his uncles back home, because he worried for their safety.
Yeah.
After he died, whoever the new ruler would be might not be as kind to them.
Right. You know what would be interesting? Is if they took the cast of An Adventure in Space and Time and redid a lot of these missing serials.
Traveler's unusual caravan and set out into the Gobi Desert.
Because I think actually the 4, the Doctor and his companions from that special, do actually come back and do audios as those characters. So.
A game of chess here.
Oh, well, I'm not very good, but I'll give you a game.
I gladly accept your challenge.
That is interesting. One of the stories is that Marco brought chess back to Europe.
Yes, I purchased them in Von Wood.
Seems unlikely that he would sleep in his tunic.
It is interesting to see that for these shots, you can tell Susan and Pinchot were taken out and just put over a backdrop.
Over there. Tagana's to arrange a peaceful settlement between them. Would a man like that lie about walking in the desert? No. No, he wouldn't. That's what's so strange. What? The fact that he did.
I mean, the Doctor already, guessed he was bloodthirsty, so probably doesn't want any peace.
What is that you do?
I keep a journal
Why?
because it interests me.
Anecdote. Next to the Bible, The Adventures of Marco Polo was the biggest selling book of that time period.
Excellent.
For those people who could actually afford books.
Well,
But who could have done it?
Bandits, Ian.
Bandits? In the desert?
Yes, this has happened before, though not to me. The bandits follow a caravan out into the desert. Then one night this happens.
it's a Tuscan
The
Raiders.
caravan is forced to turn.
Now, on the 5th day, we have traveled only 2 miles before the heat of the sun has forced us to stop. We are nearly exhausted, and our situation is perilous.
If only you had this magical box that could take you anywhere.
The worst of the sun is nearly over. We must move on again as soon as we've had this.
First appearance of the Doctor in about 20 minutes.
Yeah. Well, or is this taken from the next episode? Because I was thinking, like, remember there was that one Trouton episode where he didn't show up, so maybe Hartnell got the week off.
Yeah.
Yeah, my horse is still the strongest.
Very well, Chico.
Should you have horses in a desert?
If you don't overtax them.
Wait for me here.
Yeah?
Horses were really not ideal for a journey like this. Oxen would have been better, but
Well, I would have gone camels, but
camels don't pull, though. You know, all of the great migrations from the east coast of the United States out to the Pacific Ocean were usually done with oxen. They're better suited for long voyages like that.
Let's go.
Here's water, Marco Polo! Come for it!
that's a crazy title for the next episode.
Now, this is a minor thing. Considering, now I realize that, you know, the TARDIS translates it all into English, but it seems to me that instead of Pinchot calling him Mr. Marco and Marco calling Barbara Miss Wright, they should be using the Italian, Signor Marco and Signorina Wright. But a minor thing. Just, if I were writing it, if I had seen the script, I would have gone, yeah, let's just change it, just to make it a little bit more accurate.
Yeah. Shouldn't it be Mr. Polo?
I really don't know how often they use last names. Again, this still being the Middle Ages, not even the High Middle Ages. It seems to me that they might have gone with first names. You know, they still, back in England, they'd still be calling people, you know, Sir John or, you know, the last name. You know, again, I don't think that became a thing until probably mid-1400s or later.
Interesting. You know what I'm kind of getting tired of in these episodes? The Doctor being exhausted. Can he just do something? Like, let him do something while he's still in his prime in Doctor Who, at least. Like, yeah. I don't know. All right, I guess.
Well, it seems to be they somewhat need him incapacitated.
Yeah, maybe because I mean, there's always a thing with Doctor Who where they have to get rid of the TARDIS for whatever reason. Because yes, all of our problems could be solved if we could just use the TARDIS, at least sometimes. So maybe it is sort of that they just can't have the Doctor because maybe he would solve it too fast. But you need to account for that when you're writing these stories. Yeah. So, and yet he was out of that episode for most of it.
Yeah.
I wonder if, because he was really only in that last scene just to collapse. He didn't have too many lines. So I'm wondering if, like that Trouton episode, he did get the week off, and then just that last little bit there, maybe they filmed that first thing the next week.
Yeah.
So maybe it's that. I mean, this would be... Let's see, the first episode was 4 weeks. Add on 7 to that. Then 2. So, and then this would be the second week for this one. So it would make sense that he would get a vacation about now.
Yeah.
So
we're into like early 1964 by this time.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, that's true.
If it premiered in November
23rd,
Yeah.
1963. All right. Well, we still have 2 more parts to get through.
Now, I will say, the pace in the second episode slowed down considerably.
It did, which was not horrible. I will say, it was okay except for the sandstorm. But I think like we needed some subtitles or something on that. Granted, I think most of that was just Susan screaming Ian's name, but it would have been nice. It would be nice if in these recons they would put in some subtitles because they're already putting in what the characters are doing. So, but yeah, it did slow down a bit.
And again, as several people have commented, whereas we're watching them all in a row, people who are watching them once a week probably wouldn't have noticed how much that slowed down from the first episode to the second. So
that's true. And I've heard some people say, like, if you watch this one a week, and they didn't do reruns of Doctor Who, because they just kept adding a new episode every week. So, it would help to have more stretched out plots, because if you put too much in one episode, if you don't follow it all, or you can't remember it the next week, or even if you miss the episode, you're going to be really lost the next episode, which is true. We are watching this 50 years later in a completely different way from what it was supposed to be, but still, our point still stands. So, alrighty. Part 3.
The Cave of 500 Eyes.
Gotta go back to them caves.
Look, it's streaming down the walls. Look, we must collect this water. We must, quickly, before the ship heats up in the sun. Hurry, child, hurry, please.
Seeing those circles after seeing the little pop-out things from Adventure in Space and Time.
Well, the round things.
I think in theater terms we call those baffles.
You may use your caravan again, but before we leave in the morning, it will be locked and the key handed over to me.
Young man, you have no concept of what is happening, have you? And you still don't seem to realize that you're speaking to a man of superior intellect.
My conscience pricks me.
Thank you, Khan.
Adamant. They were the Hashashins.
Hashashins?
Yes, and they were so called because they used the drug hashish.
Are there still Hashashins in the cave?
No, Susan, they were put to the sword 20 years ago by a great Mongol conqueror called Hulagu.
Oh, Hulagu, the grandson of Kublai Khan.
Later, if you wish. Well, why not now?
Moved as far east as Russia. With the Golden Horde. By the way, anecdote. These guys smoked a lot of hashish, which is basically a variation of marijuana. And the term hashashin is where we get the English word assassin.
Now honest hands reap harvests of life from the soil where death and evil reigned. And those who journey through the veil are heard to say, "'Tis truly paradise today."
Can't remember if Hulagu actually made it to Moscow or just to Kiev, but he literally ravaged one of the big cities of Russia.
We have waited for you, Tagana.
You need wait no more, old man. What news from Novgorod?
You shall hear it. You shall hear it. Come, follow me.
Interesting iconography there. The men with the evil men with the 500 eyes there. It seems kind of from India, and yet it has some Muslim influence, it looked like, some Chinese, so maybe it's the mixing of the cultures there.
Maybe.
Frightening. Look at those eyes. I prefer not to see.
Again, that's what I remember as Hindu iconography. Of course, right about this time that the Muslim influence is moving westward, or eastward rather.
it's not the wall of eyes, it's the wall of lies. Alrighty, that's part 3.
Well, again, the pace picked up a little bit more. So, again, makes you wonder that after next week when we see all 7 episodes, if this could have been condensed to 6 or even 5. But that one, there's not much you could have cut out of that.
Yeah.
You know, they're building this great story. You got Marco going one way, and you got Tigana going some other way to try to stop the whole thing. So, again, bringing in the whole story of Hulago and the Golden Horde heading west into the Russian steppes, and then again, I can't remember if it's Kiev or Moscow, but I know he laid siege to one of the cities and completely took it over for quite some time. So, again, quite pleased with the historical accuracy here.
Yeah.
Obviously they're taking liberties with it, but still, it's a lot of fun for history geeks like us.
Yeah. I will say, there are moments, like when she's telling the story and everything, I almost like step back for a second. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm watching Doctor Who. It's like for a second, it's like, oh yeah, I'm trying to like connect it. It's like, yeah, 50 years later, you get to Matt Smith hanging off the TARDIS and everything. And it's like, sometimes I just gotta like remind myself, like, yeah, this is Doctor Who. That's the Doctor. He's just, listening to a nice story.
Yeah.
I will say, it's very clever that he just made a false key to give to Marco. I thought that was funny.
Now, it would have been interesting to see what key that he gave Marco, because the key that he was holding in his hand was like a house key.
Yes.
And you would think that he would have one of those very old-time, what we would call skeleton-type keys.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know in the more modern era, it is sort of just a house key that he uses. So it would be interesting if he actually gave him just an entirely different type of key.
Yeah, something that's from the 1200s.
Yeah. It's also interesting now that I think about it. I do remember them saying in the Dalek episode that like the TARDIS had some crazy lock, which is why Susan had to go to the TARDIS, and it's like, oh, if you don't get it right, the entire thing like disintegrates, and it's this whole thing, and it's like, no, the Doctor has a key. We dropped that. We're not going to bring that up every time. So that's interesting. We might as well move on into part 4.
Yeah, let's do it.
When will your companions realize I know what I'm talking about when I say it's dangerous to wander about at night? First, Barbara, now the Doctor goes off taking Susan and Pincho with him.
All right, Marco, you can be angry later. Let's get to this cave. Do you know where
It's
it
funny,
is?
that's what the Doctor feels like when people don't follow his instructions.
Susan saw the eyes and one of the faces move.
Oh, rubbish, child, rubbish.
Which face, Susan?
This one here.
Okay. See if it goes ow.
Marco.
Do as you will.
It's not the best image you could have gotten for Tigana.
Well?
All right.
There were 4 of them. They played dice to see who'd kill me, and he won.
All right.
He won.
Safe now, Barbara. Safe.
They played dice to see who'd kill me, which honestly, it was their downfall. They should have just done it already.
We were just in time. The least I can do is see them safely on their way home.
You think they hold you in such esteem?
The Doctor, no, with good reason. The others, yes.
Marco. Which one leads?
Every time somebody says that, do you have an instinct to just go, Polo?
The leaders are obeyed.
Don't know if you know this actress from the 50s and early 60s, but Pincho looks a lot like a very young Audrey Hepburn.
For the past 3 days, I have followed the course of the Yellow River as it flows north of the small town of Sinju, which lies nestled against the Great Wall.
I'd like to see this map in its entirety because they started coming out of the mountains, heading south and east. Then they went north towards the oasis, and now they've turned south, and now they're going back north again.
Well,
The old magician. How can you kill him?
with a stake through the heart.
Go and get the doctor out of the ship, then hide. I'm going to try a bluff. If it works, we may be able to turn the tables on Tagana. Now go, quickly.
I mean, technically, he should be safe in the TARDIS. He's the only one that has the key.
Grandfather, supposing Messer Marco won't give him the keys.
Don't worry, my child.
I think by the time I've finished with that gentleman, he'll only be too glad to let us go.
And the Doctor has some dastardly plan brewing. Probably wasn't your best idea to have one guy guarding 4 prisoners and looking away from the tent.
Okay. Now, let the credits roll. I want to...
Sure.
Mark Eden, Darren Nesbitt, Sandy Martin, Jimmy Gardner. Okay. That's all.
Alrighty. That's the first 4 parts. Which, this is different from what we normally do. We don't normally stop in the middle of the story, but... Let me just slowly write down one last note. This is a great reason to be ambidextrous.
Okay, so we're not all Leonardo da Vinci.
Yeah. There's a part of me that thinks perhaps when I write with my left hand, it is actually a bit better than when I write with my left hand. Probably because I'm going slower.
Yeah, you do have to slow down.
Alrighty. Well, so far so good.
Yeah, that certainly at the end there left us on a weird note.
Yeah, why would the guard be dead? That is a little odd. Well, we can go ahead and head into the notes. The first thing I wrote down was the Mongols. I do like getting the Mongols and Marco Polo. It is better than the first time around when we just had the cavemen. It's like, all right, what are you going to do with the cavemen? They're just a bunch of cavemen that kept talking. It was annoying. But these guys are a lot better, and they obviously have more defined personalities.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, you'll remember when we was at the Edge of Destruction where they landed in the Himalayas, and you saw the Bigfoot, and they were leading you to believe they were going to see the abominable snowman, but it turns out to be just ordinary Mongols of the time period. So that's cool.
Yeah. I wrote down 16. So this establishes that Susan is 16 years old, which is interesting because now that it does sort of make sense. Like, okay, that's why she was in school. Because I was kind of thinking, like, all right, how old is she? Because if she is like, I don't know, 75 years old, but her Gallifreyan biology, which they hadn't thought up at this time, like, it makes her young. It's like, well, then why would she need to be in school? You still kind of wonder, why would she still need to be in school? But it does sort of make sense. I guess the only question would be, why that particular time to go to school? Like, she'll go to school in 1963, and it's like, there's got to be further along in the timeline that the Doctor could have taken her, but still.
I guess that's one of those parts of the story that we've never fully explained.
Yeah,
why was he there in the junkyard?
Yeah, why was he there?
He didn't seem to be repairing the TARDIS.
No, he wasn't. And they said that they had gone on some adventures before they picked up Ian and Barbara. So I don't know. They tend to shy away from explaining what happens before the first episode. The most we get is that is just that the Doctor stole the TARDIS, and I believe they show later on that he actually stole the TARDIS with Susan and then went on their way. So let's see. The next thing I wrote down was Marco Polo and the TARDIS. Interesting idea for him to sort of be our antagonists, even though we technically have two antagonists with Marco and Tigana. But it is interesting how it's like, okay, we've got this nice guy, Marco Polo, and we just got to fix up the TARDIS and we'll be on our way. But he wants to present the TARDIS to the Khan in order so that he can, it's a big enough gift so that he can be sure that he gets back home before the Khan dies. I thought that was interesting. And it's also just interesting watching them explain the TARDIS to these people.
There's one tiny flaw in that story. If they're in the Himalayas, that means they are closer to India than they are to Shangtu, or whatever they're calling the capital at this point.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, if Marco and his people simply set off westward, they could be completely out of the Khan's empire before Khan would ever know. So
that's true.
If he, I mean, I get it that he's in the service of the Khan and he doesn't want to embarrass the Europeans and so forth. But if he truly wanted to get home, if he was worried that the Khan wasn't going to let him go, he could have just from there. It would have been very easy for them to escape.
Because
well, then again, let me retract that. His father and his uncle, are they still back with Khan? I can't remember.
I don't remember if they said or not. So it could be possible that's the case. Because you would think, like, okay, if you can escape, is the Khan going to send all his men to go get one guy in Venice? I wouldn't think so. But at that point, there is an easy way that Marco does not think about. It's like, oh, I will present this flying box to the Khan, and then he will allow me to leave. Or you could just take the flying box back home.
Yes.
You he can fix it, and he can fly it, so why not just, instead of being like, oh, well, we'll return it, and, well, the people that can make the wine glasses float, they'll figure out how to work it. And it is also interesting when he says, like, okay, well, when we get back to Venice, you can just make another one. It's like, you just don't understand, like, just the degree of, like, how complicated this ship is. Just the fact that, it's bigger on the inside, that opens up a whole thing of, how would you replicate that? So I thought that was interesting.
That's the carryover, too. That's the story of Back to the Future Part 3. When Doc Brown goes back into the 1880s, he doesn't have the materials that he needs to get back to the future. Right. So it's very interesting here that I'm surprised that the Doctor is able to repair whatever it is that he needs to repair without being inside the TARDIS to fix that. What is he using from the caravan, from Polo's caravan, that he can fix it?
Well, he does go back into the TARDIS and start to fix it and start fixing the circuit and everything. So I suppose he just has whatever he needs on the TARDIS itself.
Yeah.
Because even when they were still in the Himalayas, he was saying, like, oh, well, yeah, I can fix this, before he even met Marco and everyone. He's like, I can fix it, it's just that I can't fix it before night falls and we all freeze to death. Which I do like the varying locations in this one. Like, we're really going everywhere. And it really is a shame that this is the one that was completely lost, because they're doing a lot in this one, which I really like. I guess it would sort of be on par with what they were doing in the Daleks, because that had a lot of sets and different stuff. Although I guess they were very, like, simplified sci-fi sets, and then sort of the same forests and caves they used for the Thals. Whereas this one, it does seem like they are making new locations, although they're using the tents a lot. But they are making new locations pretty much for everything. Yeah. Which, I guess, if you only have humans, you can do that. Maybe that was one thing with the Daleks, is you spent a lot of money making those Daleks. Yeah. So, I wrote down no Doctor. So that was in part 2, where the Doctor was really just out for a while. And it really hit me, like, when it was like, okay, well, we've been traveling and traveling and traveling, and it's like, oh, yeah, last we heard the Doctor was asleep, like during that sandstorm. And it's like, I'm going to guess that was a week Hartnell had off.
Yeah.
So, which makes sense, because after seeing The Web of Fear, where there was just one episode that didn't have Troughton in it. So that was interesting. I did write down exhaustion. The Doctor is always exhausted. He got a little better in these last 2 episodes, but there just seems to always be something, like, he's just incapacitated for a little bit. Like, in the Cavemen, I think they just knocked him out for a little while until he woke up. In the Dalek episode, I remember when the radiation was happening, he was hit the worst with the radiation.
Yeah.
And it's like, why? They just keep doing it. Now, Edge of Destruction, that was fine, but that was only 2 episodes. You didn't need to do much for that one. If anything, the rest of them were more incapacitated than he was. Yeah. But he was sort of driving the conflict, especially with Ian and Barbara. So that is one thing. It's like, can we go through one of these serials without him being exhausted or something? But I mean, they're playing up. They are playing up that he is an old man. Despite the fact that that's not what we see later on throughout the show with the other Doctors, and especially in the more modern episodes. I wrote down the condensation. That was clever, but I also thought that was a little odd, because it's like, they show us like, oh, the condensation, so there's water like sort of dripping down the walls of the TARDIS. It's like, I hope that didn't ruin the TARDIS, And I was also thinking, it's like, how did they film that on this set? I mean, well, maybe their set was waterproof, because we saw in the docudrama where that first time it was too hot and the sprinklers went off. Yeah. Apparently, the set was still fine.
But it would seem to me that people of this time period in the Gobi Desert would have known about this. That the people that condensation would have collected on that cart that they were hauling. So they wouldn't have gotten as much water as they would have from inside the TARDIS, simply because wood absorbs it, and the TARDIS, being plastic or metal or whatever, would not.
Right.
But you would think, although Marco does say, yes, I've heard of this or I've seen it before.
Yeah, it took convincing, because all he saw at first was the Doctor came up with a full thing of water, and it's like, oh, you've been hiding this, and it takes a minute before he accepts, okay, yeah, I've seen condensation before, I get what you're saying. So that was interesting.
And again, back in 1963, that would have been interesting for kids to know that that's what's happening.
Yeah.
That you could collect water if you were stuck in a desert or some other kind of area without it. So.
And it was also kind of nice that it was Ian that explained it, because so he was the science teacher, I believe. Was he science or math?
I don't remember.
Yeah. And then I assumed that Barbara was the history teacher then, because she was bringing up a lot of historical facts.
I like this. She said something about, oh, that's where Karakorum used to be. And Marco said, it still is, lady, or whatever.
Yeah, it still is there. It's like, that is a funny time travel joke they can pull off. I wrote down the Cave of the 500 Eyes. That didn't do a lot. Like, that was... I don't know, I thought we would spend more time there. There would be a bit more, like, happening there. But it was really just... Barbara got captured, and then they went to go save her, and there was a little bit with, the eyes, they're moving, but that was just the room where Barbara was being held. It's like, that... It did just sort of seem to be there for, like...
And a minor plot point there, it seems to me that the Hashashins... their whole job is to kill people. So sitting around and playing dice as to who gets to kill her until somebody breaks in and stabs him, that was stretching credibility a little bit there. But
like, well, and how long does it take to play dice in order to figure out who's gonna kill her? It's like there only seemed to be like 3 of them there, but then it's like there were 3 of them there. And then when they found her, there was only one of them. We don't know what happened to the other 2. And then that one,
well, they lost the dice game, so they went off to have food or something.
I guess.
Eat dinner.
Yeah. So, I wrote down the key. There was a lot with the TARDIS key in this episode, which I like. So it seemed to be. So he did give Marco a false key at first, and he kept a real key, but then Marco takes the real key at the end here. Is basically it. All right, I was making sure.
Now, I would swear that picture of the Doctor right at the door kind of looking away, I would swear that's the iconic picture from that first season. I think if you go to Google Images, that's one of the very first pictures of Doctor Who that pops up, or William Hartnell anyway.
It might have been... It could have been like a publicity photo that they're putting in here, because it's not... These recons are interesting because it's like, okay, people have explained like the reason these recons can even happen is because, well, they didn't rerun the episode, so if you wanted to experience the episode again, you had to literally record the audio of the episode, which is just kind of weird that was a thing, but lucky that was a thing because we still have these missing episodes in some capacity. And then, I don't know, because it's like, okay, do they have images for like each scene and like different like shots and everything? It's like, well, it's not perfect, but I like that these recons, they do the best they can. If they just have a shot of the set, and then they will basically Photoshop like Ian from earlier in the episode when they had a shot of him, and then they'll put him in there. I do like that.
What astounds me, impresses me, is that the audio recordings, especially if, because I thought we saw some of the commenters said that they actually recorded this at home.
Yeah.
These, in 1963, early 64, that would have been reel-to-reel tape recorders. Those things would have been like half the size of this desk, and gigantic reels of tape, which would have needed to have been changed. I don't know that you could actually record an entire half hour's worth of show on a single tape reel, and those things were expensive. I mean, I don't remember seeing a reel-to-reel tape recorder probably until I got back to the United States. So if you had one in 1963, you had to be relatively wealthy to do that, I would think.
Yeah. Well, and then it's just like the mindset in order to be like, yes, I am actually going to set this up, put the microphone against the television, and I'm going to record it so I can listen back to it later. Now, that would be the interesting thing, listening to this without any of the visuals that we have from the recons, or even, it's a nice thing when it scrolls the, what's happening, what's supposed to be happening, but we can't hear it. So in order to just to listen to this, that had to have been a bit of a struggle, because it's not even like the audios that we listen to, where it's like, there is a bit more of like, we're going to go over here and do something. So, so it's just all interesting that, how all of this is preserved.
I'm beginning to suspect that this must have been some kind of audio done by the BBC, because I don't think the fans would have started recording it this early in the first season.
Yeah, on the fourth serial.
Yeah. So, but anyway, we're happy. Whoever did it, we're happy you did it.
Yeah. Yeah, because even this one, like, when we were looking over the schedule, it's like, we're not going to be missing episodes for a while after Marco Polo. So, yeah, I don't know, like, it just got lucky that it was this one. Well, and also with some episodes where, like, the Web of Fear that we watched, the Troughton episode, was completely missing for many, many years until they just happened to find it in a vault in, like, Africa. And it's like, well, that's convenient that broadcaster decided to keep that instead of throw it away like the BBC.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, the Doctor also said about the key, you need knowledge in order for the key to work. So if Marco just took the key and put it in, I think he said it would destroy the TARDIS, which is interesting. It's like,
he may have lied.
It could have
exaggerated.
Yeah, because I mean, in the Dalek episode, I think it was just like the lock would melt and you wouldn't be able to get in. But it is interesting that it's like, okay, you have to have a certain knowledge in order to get into the TARDIS. Which, I mean, I guess, I'm not sure if, like, that's even, like, still a thing. Like, I don't know how long that sort of idea lasts, because in modern Doctor Who, the Doctor will just give a true key to his companion. Like, all right, if you need back in here in a pinch, you have a key now. So I'm wondering, like, maybe it's something like, because by now they've established the TARDIS is alive, perhaps it's you can't just have the key. You have to have the TARDIS approve of you going in there.
TARDIS has to recognize you.
Yeah, it could be that. And then the last thing I wrote down was the escape at the end there with some sort of plan the Doctor is concocting. He keeps laughing to himself about it. You know, what he's going to do to Marco Polo. So I'm very interested to see, like, what is that crazy old man thinking, you know? And I did like the cliffhanger of Ian going over. Presumably, Ian must have known he would have had to have killed that guard then, because he was going over with the broken plate and everything, and then just going over and he's already dead. And it's like, well, why would he be dead? Unless maybe it's Tegana trying to frame them for escaping, but they're already doing that anyway, so I don't know. I have no idea.
Or maybe Ping Cho's coming out to try to save them. We don't know.
Yeah, we are not sure, but we will find out next week.
I do have one. This is probably a weird prediction here. One of the things during this time period, and you saw this when we watched Mulan, this is the time period where the Chinese figured out how to make black powder. So it strikes me the Doctor's got this plan. Will he, in the next or last 3 episodes here, come up with some way to create literally a weapon, whether it's a pistol or a rifle or something, that will, will hand that over and they'll get the TARDIS back and they'll fly off. But again, I only say this because many, many years ago, I was taking a playwriting class and I wrote up kind of a blueprint of a story that I wanted to talk about with Marco coming home and bringing the essence of gunpowder with him, and ultimately deciding against it, that he didn't want to do that he didn't want to bring that kind of conflict to Europe that they were having out in Asia. And he literally throws the gun onto the fireplace. But the play ends with one of his less scrupulous servants taking it out and simply holding it up and looking at it like, this is going to change the world. So anyway, so that's a prediction. We'll see next 3 episodes whether something like this comes to pass.
Yeah. That is pretty much all I wrote down. You got anything else?
I'm good.
All right. Well, next week we will move on to the final 3 parts of Marco Polo. So, with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.